Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Sperging Out Podcast. I am your host, Mitch Grace. I am the author of the book, Growing Up with Asperger's, Lessons Learned and Shareable Wisdom, on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook formats. And as always, I'm joined here by my co-host, Extraordinaire.
Hello, I am an autism therapist, and I do in-home therapy with adults primarily, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, as always, for joining. And upon reflection of the last episode, it ended on a pretty downer note. We had a whole discussion about how autistic people are people, not props. And so we thought we'd discuss something a bit more lighthearted today, and not necessarily autism related, just as a palate cleanser for us. And we're going to be discussing today what we've been watching recently. Movies, TV shows, internet series. Co-host Extraordinaire, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, so let's see. What have I been watching lately? The last show I watched fully was House of the Dragon, which was like a...
Oh, really?
I mean, it was all right. It was just a little slow, and then it got to the end, and the finale was a big letdown.
So it sounds like it has a lot of similarities with its sequel series?
Yeah. It's the season finale, so maybe the next coming seasons will be better, but... The show was really engaging, really well written, and then you get to the end and nothing happens, and you're like, you can't build up to nothing.
Wow.
Because there's gonna be a year before you have another season.
Is it similar to Game of Thrones? How the original run of Game of Thrones, where it's dragons are coming, but they don't come until the tail end of the series?
No, this one's more about factional wars. So this is a prequel to the original,
right?
And both families have dragons, which are essentially nuclear weapons in this universe. If you release a dragon on the battlefield, you win at the cost of literally everything. You burn the whole thing down. So they're at war, but the whole how do I put it? The whole way they're fighting is interesting because they both have dragons, but they don't want to use their dragons because it's escalation. But they also are afraid that if they send their little dragon in, they'll send the big dragon in, which will kill the little dragon, and then they won't have a dragon. So it becomes this whole balancing act of genuine wartime strategy. It's very engaging. It's just you got to build up to a season finale where something happens.
Huh. I haven't seen House of the Dragon, but I do know that, it takes place, this is the story of the, this tells the story of the House of Targaryen civil war before the proper start of the TV series, correct?
Yes. So it's the first season gets into how the Civil War begins, which it's over the same nobility BS that every real life medieval war started with, where it's just Dad said I get to be the queen. No, Dad said I get to be the queen. Fighting over the throne. And that's another good theme actually the show does well, is it covers the disparity between the nobility and the common folk, because the common folk don't care about the war.
Yeah.
And the nobility just drag them all into it because,
Right.
They have to.
Yeah, you are peasants, you will do as I say. Did Game of Thrones touch on that at all?
A teeny bit every once in a while, but it didn't really cover it the same way House of the Dragon does. Because Game of Thrones isn't really about open warfare until the very end when the writing went off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is very much about open warfare, and it's very focused on the nobility, whereas Game of Thrones had a big focus on the common folk. So here, everything's from the perspective of the nobility, and every once in a while they interact with the common people, and then you remember, oh yeah, the common people don't care about all this bloodline stuff, don't care about this war, can barely feed themselves, but also are dragged into this war by proxy because they live within these kingdoms and have no choice.
Wow. It's a shame. Hopefully they'll do more of that in the upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm hoping the next season will be more interesting. This one's just been... I don't know. It's weird to watch a show that's good until the very final episode, and you're like, oh, that leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Kind of like a certain other show that we can talk about.
Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Game of Thrones had a couple bad seasons at the end, and I'll argue that one. Those last, pretty much the moment they were off the books, the show just went downhill so quickly.
I hear that Battle of the Bastards was a high point, though. In the post-book seasons.
That's true. That one is pretty cool. I don't know. Is that post-book? Yeah, that is post-book.
It's post-book.
That's funny. Yeah, I never thought about that.
Because the deals with like the House Stark versus the Boltons, who are under the thumb of the Lannisters, right?
Yeah, and it's properly built up and paid off pretty well. But yeah.
Yeah, I've been digging into Game of Thrones lore recently. I'm curious as to why they went for the Targaryen Civil War as the prequel series as opposed to Robert Baratheon's Rebellion, because you could use... I mean, you probably couldn't use the same actors, but you could have younger versions of the same characters we already know in a conflict. Are you familiar with Robert's Rebellion?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for those that don't know, so House Targaryen was on the Iron Throne, but they had a Mad King, so to speak, and through some rather shady circumstances, I think a House Stark member is executed, and that causes House Stark and House Baratheon to kind of unite and rebel against the Targaryens, and then the Lannisters, being the slimy shits that they are, kind of sneaking at the last second to get some of that, to win, to get some of the spoils of the war, so to speak. And then this is what really this shows a lot of climactic stuff which becomes consequential in the early seasons of Game of Thrones, like Ned Stark kind of being wary of the Lannisters, specifically Tywin, and then my personal thing, which I wish we got to see, which was Jaime Lannister killing the Mad King, which the morality of that is fascinating in the world of Game of Thrones, because he did objectively what he did was a good thing. Like, he killed a mad tyrant, but he did it in such a sleazy, backhanded way that it tarnishes his name and reputation. So so the kingdom and his own family kind of hate him for it in the aftermath of it, which leads us to the start of Game of Thrones. So
I think the reason they didn't go with that was because they wanted to get separate from Game of Thrones.
Oh, really?
Because House of the Dragon is based on, like, essentially a chronological telling of what happened in the period. So there's, like, very little detailed information written-wise. So they just have bullet points of, like, what events happened when, and they can fill in the blanks however they see fit to make the story work as best.
Oh.
And what happens doesn't... It sort of relates to what happens in Game of Thrones with the Targaryen family, but in reality it doesn't really connect directly, so there's a lot of room for, like, their own writing, their own characters.
I see. And it's still not good?
House of the Dragon?
Yeah.
No, House of the Dragon is good. The final episode just doesn't hit right. Okay. Like, season 1 and season 2 are genuinely good. All the episodes are good. It's just the final episode of season 2 just makes you go, oh, okay, that's it? That's the end of a season?
That's a giant cliffhanger, huh?
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
And, like, I've read the timeline and seen some of the... Like, I know what's going to happen in the future seasons, so I'm excited to get to that part, and I wish they would just get there, because it does feel like it's dragging a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the characters are extremely well written. Daemon Targaryen, played by Matt Smith, is fantastic. Great character. He doesn't do anything in season 2. He just wanders around a castle, but the development of his character during this time period is so good.
Really?
Fantastic, yeah.
Wow.
I don't want to spoil it, but his development during this part is fantastic. So well done.
Very nice, very nice.
Have you watched anything lately?
So, yes, I have. I went to the movie theaters, and I saw Transformers 1.
Nice. That's a good... Yeah, I've seen it.
So, yes, Transformers 1 is an animated buddy comedy, coming of age, falling out story, which is the origin story of the characters that would become Optimus Prime and Megatron. And we're going to go full into spoilers on this one, because there's a lot to talk about and a lot of good things to talk about. So, co-host extraordinaire, what stood out to you about this movie?
Well, the dynamic between Optimus Prime, it feels a bit like a spoiler to say that. The dynamic between him and Megatron, like, honestly, just Megatron in general. I said before we started recording the podcast that Megatron did nothing wrong, and I stand behind that. Like, Megatron, I mean, we're forgetting the spoilers. Megatron wants to kill a character for betraying everyone and lying to them, and in a way that affected everyone super negatively, and I don't blame him. Not even a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So, yes, to go full on to spoilers, the Transformers don't have their transforming cogs like the characters Orion Pax and D16, which who will go on to become Megatron and Optimus Prime. They can't transform, and they're essentially and. It's like Cybertron has a bit of a caste system where there's a very sharp divide between those that can transform and those that can't. And so Optimus Prime and Megatron, who again are D16 and Orion Pax, they're miners. They mine for this material of Energon, which has stopped flowing because of the 13 original Primes were supposedly slain by the Quintessons. Who I wasn't expecting to see the Quintesson. That is a poll from the original animated series.
Didn't know what that was.
Oh yeah, they're so in the original animated series, the Quintessons are a face shifting. Like they have 3 faces that kind of swivel around.
Oh, okay.
And then
Quintesson. Okay, that makes sense. Their name.
And then in the original series, they were actually the ones that created the Transformers. But that's been retconned so many times. But typically, the Quintessons are portrayed as a antagonistic faction amongst the Transformers lore, so it makes sense that they're here in this instance. And so Sentinel Prime, who voiced by John Hamm, by the way.
Yes.
I had no idea that was him. His voice work was very solid. I mean, the voice work all around was good.
Yeah, John Hamm's great.
And then Chris Hemsworth doing just an American accent for Orion Pax, and then Brian Tyree Henry as D16. So good.
Yeah.
There's this one I think the scene that really brought this movie to this is good shit was when it was Orion and D16 first learned that Sentinel Prime is selling them out to the Quintessons essentially, and D6 and Orion Pax says we can remove him from his throne, but D16 says no, I want to kill him.
Based.
And then the entire tone of the movie shifts from that line, and
that becomes the conflict for the rest of the movie, essentially.
Yes, God, I love this. I love how it's executed because the emotional moment was given time to breathe. It actually sits. There is no quip to cut it off or anything. No, it actually sits, and it's amazing. Yeah,
it doesn't come back to killing's bad. It doesn't give you the simplistic views. It really does feel more complex. I understand why you want to kill Sentinel Prime. However, by doing this, you are you're crossing a line you can't ever uncross, and you're changing the dynamic of our entire social structure if you do that. So, I understand why it's bad, but at the same time, I don't blame Megatron for even a millisecond, because I would do the same thing.
Oh,
bro betrayed everyone.
Yeah, he literally made it sure from birth that the miners couldn't transform.
Yeah, you created a slave race.
Yes, and it's genuinely. I'm sure that the whole I took out your T-Cog at birth. I am 95% sure that is going to be a metaphor. That is going to be read as a metaphor for something. But by people way more smarter than me. So, but the movie's so good, and then you were gonna say something?
Oh no, I was just saying it's really good. I thought it was going to be terrible because the trailers did not convey that this is a movie for people with brains. The trailers felt very for little kids, dumb jokes. The movie. But the movie itself is actually much more substantial than that. The writing is fantastic. Yeah,
the trailer made it look like a Marvel movie when it's really not.
Yeah.
So, and then just although I do gotta say though, did you see the post-credit scene?
No, I don't sit through those. Okay. Sorry, I did not. I don't know what the post-credit scene is.
So the post-credit scene is where, Megatron. In the movie, the Megatron and the High Guard, as they're called, were banished from the capital city.
Yeah.
And so now they're on the surface, and they literally brand themselves Decepticons. And the Megatron's hey, we're gonna essentially. He essentially declares war on Optimus, but my thing that makes me scratch my head is, okay, what's your cause here? Because Optimus, you all have your T-Cogs. Energon is flowing again, so the caste system doesn't need to exist anymore. So what is your cause?
And why are you mad at Optimus? Like, I mean, I understand why you'd be mad at Optimus as an individual, but like starting a factional war is a little extreme.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really. I didn't see this post-credit scene, but like the end of the movie does not translate to that. That's a little extreme.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's like I don't get, like I'm like him, like his fight against Sentinel. We completely understand. The audience is rooting for him and whatnot, but like now that Sentinel is gone, Cybertron knows he's a fraud.
And they're making society not a slave system.
Yes, everyone can transform. Energon is flowing. All of Megatron's goals were achieved by Optimus, with the exception of killing Sentinel. That was always Megatron's thing. Mm-hmm. So now Megatron's like, oh, we're going to declare war on Optimus. Is like, okay, why though? It feels like the instant Megatron goes back there and sees how everyone can transform, Energon's flowing again. I feel like
I feel like he would calm down and be like, okay,
yeah, so
I get it.
Okay, because so the movie didn't do great out of the gate box office wise, but there's actually been like a resurgence of it through the social media campaign and YouTube. Are you familiar with this at all?
I'm familiar with it because I watched the movie because of that resurgence. Because initially I thought it was bad because the trailers seemed bad, and then people kept telling me it was good, and I kept seeing reviews saying it was good, and I was like, well, I gotta go see this then. So I assume that's what you mean. Yes,
it's that, and then if this movie, because the movie is estimated to have like a $74 million or even $100 million, $130 million budget, and so far it's only made $115 million at the box office. So, and that's total. That's more. Well, that's domestic and international box office. So I'm hoping. I'm really hoping
makes enough money to get a sequel. Yeah.
Well, that, and I feel like this is also one of those, since it's Transformers, the whole reason this franchise exists is to sell toys. So I'm really hoping the toys sell.
So you're here first. Everyone, go out and buy your Megatron toy.
Just buy your Optimus Prime and Megatron toys. So we get a sequel. And so I'm interested because they do leave the movie open enough to open for a sequel, like. Aside from the post-credits scene, Optimus Prime, in his typical Transformers fashion, movie fashion, sends a message to the Quintesson saying, "Hey, fuck off," essentially. Yeah. So, I could see a sequel being made where, like, maybe Optimus Prime
war with the Quintessons, and then Megatron's like a background kind of threat.
Either that, or Optimus and Megatron quickly realize, "Hey, we can't. If it's a three-front." If it's a three-way war, none of us are going to win. The Quintessons are going to kill us all, so we need to unite on this. And then maybe they just disagree on how to go about doing it, which leads to an even bigger falling out. Which leads, but
they could go for the is it Michael Bay who made the Transformers movies?
The live-action ones, yeah.
Yeah, they could go for that canon and be like, yeah, Cybertron gets destroyed, and then.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and they can lean into that. Because I remember watching those movies and also being like, low-key, Megatron's right, though. Like, yo, Optimus Prime, you betrayed your entire people for humans. But they're just like another species you met. Megatron's like low-key, if Megatron was like, Optimus, you're a race traitor, I'd have been like, a little bit, low-key.
I mean, to be fair, in Transformers 3, like, they were going to enslave humanity so they could rebuild Cybertron. I kind of can't buy Optimus Prime, but like, nah.
Yeah, there was a couple moments. Wasn't there like one of the plot points is they're gonna like transport Cybertron or terraform Earth in the Cybertron? They're like, yeah, and then everyone will die during this process. Yeah. And you're like, yo, you could just like not do that. You could just live here.
Yeah, I think that's in the third movie.
Yeah.
Or is it the fourth movie? I can't remember.
I don't know. Those movies aren't well written. I was just making a joke mostly.
The first one though, the first Transformers movie holds up unironically.
I have to rewatch it. It's been a while.
It's a much more...
Put a cube in my chest, Sam. Sorry.
There's this one Robot Chicken sketch where it's Optimus Prime and Shia LaBeouf, but of course it's all Robot Chicken dolls.
Yeah, claymation.
And Optimus Prime goes, like, Sam, you must keep the Allspark from Megatron. If he has it, he could rule the entire universe. Or it could kill him.
Instantly.
Or it could bring him back to life. And then there's like a comedic pregnant pause. And Optimus Prime says, Sam, I don't know what the fuck this thing does. I actually don't know what it does. I'm like, that's peak.
The writers keep telling me it does different things. I don't know what it does. I read the script and this doesn't make sense.
I like this. like, oh, Megatron, why do you want the all spark?
Oh no, we're gonna devolve into doing I'm gonna end up doing a Starscream impression. You gotta stop me.
I don't want to stop you.
No, I'm not doing a Starscream. He might be my favorite Transformer, that's just because I really like airplanes. And also his voice is brilliant. His original voice, the cartoon.
It is great.
Megatron!
Did you like Steve Buscemi as Starscream?
I did like that. It's not. It doesn't have that same. I don't think anyone's ever gonna capture that initial voice actor. I wish I remembered his name.
Yeah.
But he killed it. That screech. I mean, his name's Starscream.
Yeah.
The voice is perfect. But Steve Buscemi was good.
And didn't you love it how when Megatron is done choking Starscream in the movie, his voice becomes more raspy?
Yeah, he just sounds more. Yes, that was so good.
I wish Steve Buscemi
was real. I'm sorry, I had to.
I wish Steve Buscemi Starscream got more lines. Is my point.
I do too. Yeah, I wish Steve Buscemi was just in more things. It's kind of surprising how few things he's in for such a great actor.
Have you seen Boardwalk Empire?
Yes. Oh my gosh, he
I
killed
haven't.
it.
I know he's in it.
It's so good, and he does such a phenomenal job. Great actor.
So what's that show about? I haven't seen...
It's about the Prohibition. So he's creating a business illegally selling alcohol.
And that's just the show, kind of like
that's pretty much the whole show. It's got like that crime syndicate underground messiness.
So like in like Sopranos way or like more.
It's no, I mean in the Sopranos way in the sense that it's organized crime, but the Sopranos is more grounded and more casual. Where like most of the episodes are actually just about like the everyone in the business just kind of bullshitting and hanging out until bad stuff happens.
Right.
Boardwalk Empire is very much like about setting up the business and all the crime that's happening and how Steve Buscemi becomes a worse and worse person throughout the show.
It's like Scarface?
Yeah, actually. Very similar, weirdly enough, thematically.
Huh. Is it on any streaming platforms that you know of?
Oh, I don't remember. I watched it when it came out. I think was it on AMC initially? I don't actually remember what it was on. I watched it when it came out forever ago.
I thought it was on like one of those premium channels like HBO or Stars or something like that before.
It probably was. I mean, it's got that quality. But yeah. Boardwalk Empire is fantastic.
I'll see if I can
wholeheartedly recommend.
Alrighty, I'll see if I can watch it. Another show that was on one of those non-HBO premiums. It was on Showtime, I think. It's a show called Episodes. Have you heard of that?
No.
Okay, so it's about these. Well, first of all, watch it. It's a comedy.
Okay.
Watch it. That's
sold.
Yes, that's my recommendation to you, audience. If you can find the show Episodes, watch it. It's very good. So it's this British couple who they're writers, and they make a show called. I'm not going to spoil it. This show I will not spoil, but it's about this couple that makes a British series about a coach and his team of youth athletes, and it gets brought over to America and Hollywood because they want to make a US version of it, kind of like The Office and stuff like that. So, hilarity ensues because Hollywood's full of scumbags, and to get. This isn't a spoiler because you find this out in episode 1. The headliner for this Americanized version of this British show is Matt LeBlanc, who was of Friends fame. And Matt LeBlanc in the show Episodes plays a fictionalized version of himself. And if you're thinking to yourself, Matt LeBlanc playing a fictionalized version of himself, does he play himself like yes? The answer is yes, and it's amazing. So it's a small cast, great characters. It's a short series. Like each season, I think it has 4, maybe 3 seasons. Each season has like 6 episodes. They're all like an hour long, but it is fantastic. The show was for writing and for acting for Matt LeBlanc specifically. It was nominated for a bunch of awards, deservedly so. The dynamic between the British couple is great. The dynamic with the Hollywood scumbags are great. It's a great, hilarious show.
I'll have to look it up. Yeah, I haven't heard of it at all.
It's so good.
Okay.
It's so good.
Yeah, I've been getting to podcasts lately because I haven't had any shows to watch. There haven't been really anything.
Oh, really? What have you been listening to?
So I re-listened to the Magnus Archives, which is a horror podcast.
Huh.
It's mostly one-off vignettes, horror vignettes, but they all kind of string together with themes until it becomes like a world-building exercise.
Uh-huh.
And the world building's fantastic.
Oh, okay.
There's, I think, like 300 episodes.
Oh, how long are the episodes each? Does it vary?
It varies, but I think they're like 15 minutes each, 30 minutes each. Honestly, I don't remember.
Those are short.
They all kind of blend together because it's like the premise is that a man just got hired to be an archivist at the Magnus Archives in England. Mm-hmm. And the Magnus Archives, they take people's statements about paranormal instances they experienced. And none of them believe it. They're just like, legally the government wants to get these statements in case they relate to actual crimes, whatever.
Right.
So he gets there, and the archives are just a mess. They are disorganized. Everything's on paper, and he's like, oh, God, okay, I'm going to digitize these, and I'm going to order them. So he finds that he has to read a bunch of them himself. And as he starts reading them, he's like, scoffing and mocking them and being like, well, these are absurd, these are silly, and like trying to come up with excuses for why they're, not paranormal. But as the show goes on, there start to be reoccurring characters and themes within the stories, and you start to make connections. And then eventually, like, one of his coworkers, like, yo, that's crazy. And he's like, what? So the spiders, like, wrapped the guy's dead body up. I mean, he was dead for, like, a couple weeks? And they're like, he was dead for one day, and his entire body was in a cocoon. That's not normal. And he's like, well, it was probably, like, hyperbolic. And they're like, it was in the police report. Like, one of his coworkers has to step and be like, bro, this is weird. Stop trying to act like this isn't weird.
Wow.
And it ends up, becoming like a whole world building where like all of this stuff is integrated, and there's a system where these horrors and nightmares all exist. And it's extremely well voiced, well written. Best horror I've ever interacted with. I'll stand behind that. Like, better than any movie I've seen, better than any game I've played.
Wow. And it's all audio, I take it?
Yep.
Wow. So it's like one of those radio dramas from back in the day, like War of the Worlds, except...
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of what it feels like.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know if anyone's familiar with like horror podcasts. Think of Night Vale, except not with the cheeky, upbeat tone, where it's just like really grim, actually, instead.
Oh wow. The only horror close to podcasts I've heard of are the true crime podcasts that are very popular for amongst a certain demographic for some reason.
Yeah, I've listened to a couple true crime podcasts. They're like 50-50. If they're the ones that are like dramatized, trying to be like, ooh, the violence, the serial killer, and you're like, oh, dude, I don't care.
Right.
Like, it's so edgy. But if they're the ones that are like actually getting into like the crime and like how the police found the person, or like all the details in like the technical way, or it's like explaining how blood splatter analysis works and stuff, those are really interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, but most of them are like dramatized.
Ah, that's a shame.
Let's see. I've been listening to Ghost Wax as well. It's another horror podcast.
Ghost Wax?
Yeah, there's this organization. Oh, what are they called? I'm only 10 episodes in, so I'm not like an expert. But so far, it's been really good. I can't remember the name. There's this organization where they essentially have a necromancer. And whenever they find a dead body that seems suspicious or seems like it died in a way that isn't normal, they have him resurrect them and interview them and be like, hey, explain to me how you died. And then they explain it, and he goes, okay, I'm going to write. And then he writes a report, and he's like, okay, report. I think there's like a shapeshifter in this town, so we gotta send some people to get rid of that thing. And that's it. That's the whole show. It's just like this dude talking to people who died, and the people being like, you won't believe this shit.
Wow.
There was some dude going to work as me, and everyone thought he was me. And then people were like, you've been so much happier lately. And he was like, what the hell? And then he killed me.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
But yeah, it's really well done. It kind of gives you the same vibe as the Magnus Archives, being like vignettes, because it's individual people being interviewed.
Yeah.
But the tone is different for sure. Magnus Archives has this creeping horror that just really is oppressive. Whereas this feels more natural, where like the interviewees are often just like explaining it, like, whatever, this is how I died, I'm already dead, can't really do anything about it.
Right. Where can you find these podcasts, by the way?
Magnus Archives is on YouTube and Spotify and probably every platform you could think of. And Ghost Wax is on Spotify.
Okay. All right. You got 2 recommendations for you there.
Wholehearted, too.
Nice. Very nice. A podcast that I haven't been watching, but my opinion has started to shift on recently. Co-host extraordinaire, do you recall a YouTube channel by the name of Screen Junkies?
Yes. Yes, I do.
They were the ones who made the Honest trailers famous before they went off the quality of those went off a fucking cliff.
Yeah.
So, for context, this was like midway through Phase 1, borderline early parts of Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So the first Avengers had already come out. They're going into the third Iron Man and third Iron Man movies, the Captain America and Thor sequels, Interesting Guard of the Galaxy, and then around this time, the Star Trek movies by J.J. Abrams were still coming out. Disney had bought Star Wars, so the hype of Episode 7 was coming out because that was like the first thing they announced one of the first things they announced when they bought Star Wars. And the team of Screen Junkies had a movie debate podcast called Movie Fights, where it'd be 3 people and a judge, and they would debate movie topics.
Okay, I can get behind that.
And
I think I remember that.
And the thing is that the Screen Junkies, and since they were so popular and since they got access to a lot of MCU and Disney stuff, they would. A lot of times the movie topics they would debate were MCU or quote-unquote nerd culture related, because this was in the transitional phase where nerd culture was transitioning from becoming not mainstream to mainstream.
Yeah.
Where you could still kind of get bullied for being a nerd for liking all this stuff. So it's a fascinating timepiece, but also it's also a timepiece in the sense that by watching Screen Junkies content, the movie fights and the other stuff they're doing, it's very clear that it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure y'all are getting maybe not paid to say this stuff, but it's kind of like Collider, for example. Like they were the flagship series along with Collider about all this nerd culture stuff where it's like, oh, everything's positive, and whenever things are shit, like Thor 2, they're like, well, it's not that bad. I'm like, come on now.
Don't ask questions, just consume product and get excited for new product.
Yes, exactly. And so as a timepiece, it's very fascinating in that aspect, but I also find the concept of this podcast frustrates me, because a movie debate podcast, you can do something like that. Mm-hmm. And like, consider they were so big, they would have the guys from CinemaSins on. They had the nostalgia critic, Doug Walker, on. And so, at a certain point, the Doug Walker episode frustrated me, because I rewatched it.
Yeah.
Because regardless of what your opinions of Doug Walker are, he is an encyclopedia when it comes to media, like movies, TV shows.
I like Doug Walker.
and so you can actually, there's a lot of stuff you could get into with him. Doug Walker's gone on and on about how his favorite movies are like a Brazil and the themes that are going on that movies and whatnot. And what is the first question they ask the debate panel that has Doug Walker on it? Who should be Green Lantern?
What?
I'm not kidding.
Why?
I don't.
What a dumb question.
It has to be, it has to be fucking nerd culture related. It can't just be movie related. Like occasionally they would do movie stuff like, oh, what's the best movie from the 90s? What's the best movie from Spielberg, Scorsese, Tarantino?
Something that would be related to Doug Walker and not like very out of like I can see why they'd think it's related, but it seems like they don't know who Doug Walker is if they're asking him that question. Yeah,
he reviews Marvel movies not because he wants to, quote unquote, but it's because it's the new thing, and I need to maintain my audience, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But the show as a concept is great, but the execution of it was just so absolutely flawed. I was like, it infuriates me, because I want there to be another movie debate podcast that isn't corporate, that isn't shill.
Yeah, there isn't just a sly way of advertising movies rather than actually talking about them.
Yeah, seriously. I remember.
I do like the idea, though. We should get Joe Rogan and ask him, we should get Joe Rogan on the podcast and ask him who he thinks the next Green Lantern should be.
Oh.
I like the idea of asking celebrities the completely stuff that's just way out of their wheelhouse and watching them struggle.
Yeah, and
but yeah, I agree with you though. I would like there to be like a film podcast or a nerd culture podcast of any sort that isn't just a paid advertisement.
Yeah,
because all of them are just like pro Marvel, pro Star Wars now, or paid by Disney. All of them are.
Yeah, there's a reason why the audiences for Screen Junkies and Collider went down the drain, and I actually think it was because of Last Jedi. Last Jedi was the movie that was so contentious between the nerd culture that it genuinely created a divide. And so a lot of people thought the movie was bad. And so The Mask couldn't come... like the mask couldn't come off per se, but it was. But a lot of audiences started to realize, wait, no, this movie is genuinely bad. Why are you praising it to high heaven? This is bullshit. And so their audience started to leave in droves, which is very telling.
Yeah, I think that was... Actually, now that you say it, I think that really was the breaking point. Because when, those movies came out and they were... Obviously, everyone was paid off by Disney to give it the most glowing reviews humanly possible. Last Jedi is, wasn't it the bit that on Rotten Tomatoes it had 100 for a while, or had a 90 or an extremely high critical review? And then the moment user scores came out, it was 4 out of 10. This movie sucks.
Yeah.
That is exactly it. That was the breaking point where everyone's like, wait a minute. Everyone who's seen this movie thinks it sucks, but all these critics and all these nerd culture talking heads all said it was great. Yeah, and it just tanked all of their PR, or their reputation.
Yeah, and then, because the reason they were able to get away with it in the phase 2 of the MCU, Thor 2 was a bad movie. It's still a bad movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's boring
Bland.
as piss.
Yeah, it's forgettable.
But, the Marvel's track record at that point was consistently good, so you could sort of get away with being oh, Thor 2 wasn't that bad. It definitely has flaws and whatnot. So,
yeah, you can make an argument, it's bland, but it's not, it's not insulting.
Yeah.
The Last Jedi is.
The reason the audiences didn't exactly turn on Screen Junkies was because of that. They could sort of play off the whole oh, it's bad, but it's not that bad and whatnot. And so, but then the Last Jedi came out, and then they couldn't hide any longer.
Yeah, because it's just so aggressively bad. I don't know. It's intentionally bad. That's the meme people say, is that Rian Johnson intentionally made the Last Jedi a joke or an insult to the entire series, because that's what it feels like, right?
To me, it feels like he genuinely tried to do something. He tried to take it in a different direction, but it just, execution-wise, it just fell on its face.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Or maybe the production studio producers were you have to have Luke Skywalker in there, and he's okay, well, if you're gonna force me to do this, I'm gonna make him not the character you like.
His characterization of Luke Skywalker was terrible, but his stuff with Rey, the conflict between Rey and Kylo, I genuinely thought was interesting.
Yeah, I liked Kylo.
And the whole thing where they could talk through the Force, I'm oh, okay, that's an interesting little thing. And then the whole thing with Rey and her supposed parents at the time, where she was in that mirror sequence and she snapped, and I'm okay,
that was visually there.
And I was okay, I want to see where this goes. And then Kylo tells her, hey, yeah, you came from nothing. I'm okay, I want to see where this goes. But then there are other parts of the movie that are so bad, where nah, I don't want to see episode 9. This is shit.
Yeah. And then you see episode 9, and you're oh, it's even worse. How'd you do that?
And then Lucasfilm had the audacity to say, oh, we had a roadmap plan. This is the plan. Fucking shit it was.
Yeah, we planned to have Palpatine's resurrection announced on Fortnite and not in the movie.
Yeah.
That would kill me. I saw the movie before I saw the Fortnite event.
Same here.
And it was just in the opening text crawl of the movie, they're by the way, Palpatine's back. And you're excuse me? You can't just slip the premise in there like that.
It's oh god, so bad.
I was so tilted.
Yeah, it's you know what we should do if we ever grow the podcast enough, we should have a spinoff where it could be called Sperging About
media.
Yeah, Sperging Out Media. It could be the debate format, movie fights out of Screen Junkies, except actually good. Oh, shots fired, but I don't care.
Yeah, we can take sponsorships from HelloFresh or Factor or something. Sponsorships that aren't related to the things we're talking about, so it doesn't become a conflict of interest.
Oh god, do you remember Loot? They're the main
The
sponsor.
Loot boxes.
Loot Crate. Loot Crate was the main sponsor of all of these fucking podcast, movie fights, the Screen Junkies show, everything on Collider. It got so bad that fucking Red Letter Media had an entire parody show that made fun of the Loot Crates.
I forgot about that. Yeah, those things are awful too. It's pay $30 a month and we'll send you $5 worth of junk toys that you can buy at Walmart. And you're why would anyone? I'm a grown adult. Why would I want this?
It's because the corporations smelled the money of nerd culture and they wanted to capitalize on it, and they did. They did.
People still buy Funko Pops for some reason.
I don't get it. But fucking Loot Crate. That was. We're never taking a Loot Crate sponsorship. I don't even know if Loot Crate's still around.
I can't imagine. I don't know how that would I like my HelloFresh Loot Crate.
Right.
It's a lot more enjoyable when I get to cook food.
Exactly. And then, not sponsored by HelloFresh, by the way. Hashtag not sponsored.
We're not sponsored.
But like, so like nowadays there is a Chrome or a browser extension. I use Google Chrome, but there is a browser extension called Ad Blocker, but for YouTube. Like no, it's called Sponsor Block, and again we're not sponsored by this browser extension, but I'm just talking about it. But essentially, whenever YouTubers do ad reads, it essentially skips them, and it skips you into where.
How does it know where the ad reads are?
I think they're user submissions, or the YouTuber does it in the same place every so often, or listens for keywords or whatever.
It's got like an AI listen bot. It's like. Rage, and it just cuts like super hard. Like they said, raid, cut the video.
And 50% off, or use my promo code, or I'll see you on the battlefield, or whatever. It's like, bitch, no. And so that would have come in handy so much during the shill era of these podcasts, the Collider and Screen Junkies era. They would have got a lot
shorter.
Yeah, they would have been a lot shorter, but also because I remember those ad reads for Loot Crate, and I just remember being so disinterested in it. Like, not only was it an ad, so it already lost me, but it's like, oh, this month's theme is heroes, and you get so much swag from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, from the Marvel movies. I'm like,
but they also didn't do them like direct ad reads. Like most YouTubers, because they legally have to, will be like explicitly like, this is an ad read. I'm going to read an ad, and they read the ad read. Whereas those old ones, they would just slip it in like they were naturally just talking about how much they love Loot Crate every episode, and you're like, you guys have to say this is an ad. This is messed up.
And then on top of that, they would do unboxings of the Loot Crates, and they're trying so hard to praise the products,
even though they're trash.
Yeah, and it got to the point again where Red Letter Media said, "Very cool."
Very cool.
And so there's this one that I saw where I don't know if it's Screen Junkies, but it might have been IGN, but someone was doing an unboxing, and someone says, "Oh, hey, you get this is Captain America Civil War themed, I think." And the box was like, "Oh, hey, here's this Crossbones patch. He's very impactful in the movie." But in the same breath, in the same sentence, he says, "I haven't seen the movie." And I'm just like, "Are you kidding me?"
I just had a great idea.
Okay.
A podcast where we talk about films we've not seen. And we just talk like we know what we're talking about. We're like, neither of us have seen Strings. And then we just talk about Strings for 30 minutes.
Neither of us have seen There Will Be Blood. or Gangs of New York.
We'll have to pick a movie I haven't seen.
Right.
So Daniel Day-Lewis is off the board. I think I've seen everything he's ever been
in. We haven't seen... What's a movie I know for a fact you haven't seen? We haven't seen Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
I've seen that.
You have?
That's the sequel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I've seen it too. Okay.
It's a movie.
I like the... It's like the opening is very emotional because Chadwick Boseman passed away.
Yeah.
And so the funeral scenes was very well done. Although a gripe I had with it was they have the funeral and then they skip 5 years into they do a 5-year time skip, which I'm saddened by because I really wanted to see a nation in mourning because hey Wakanda, your king just died. We didn't get to see that nation in mourning.
Transition of power. There's a lot of factors that would have been interesting, but I understand why they did it because
I get it.
The only reason they did that was because Boseman passed away in real life and they didn't want to
Okay, first off, I just want to say what a fucking raw deal did Chadwick Boseman get just in life. He grows up in South Carolina and I think he's from South Carolina.
I don't know.
Yeah. But he gets to play all of these movie roles where he plays very important black men in the history of America.
And he crushes it. He's great in all the roles.
Jackie Robinson, James Brown, Thurgood Marshall, whatnot. And then he plays Black Panther, one of the most famous black comic book characters ever. And what does he get rewarded with for his trouble? Not only does he get cancer, but cancer in his colon.
What?
Cancer in his ass. And it's fatal, by the way.
We're going to have to cut this part of the podcast.
Why? It's genuinely what happened. He had
that is true.
He had colon cancer, and he died of colon cancer.
That
what
sucks.
A fucking raw deal.
Yeah. It wasn't great.
I feel so bad for the guy.
At least he was in. At least he put his name out there and was like really well known, and everyone liked him. Like, I don't know, he did really well at the end. He didn't just fade into obscurity like a lot of people, and they start to get ill. Like he had
a bunch of movies that he did scenes for that were released posthumously. Yeah. Like he did a Spike Lee movie. He did a different movie about like New Orleans musicians in the 1920s. I want to say.
Okay, I don't think I saw that one.
I think that was the one where he got posthumously nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor, but then that was the year Anthony Hopkins won it for something. It wasn't Transformers 5, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what Anthony Hopkins was in.
But yeah, rest in peace. So, well, what's a movie you haven't seen that we can make fun of?
Okay, what movies are out that I haven't seen? I've seen Joker 2. I've seen Beetlejuice.
I haven't seen Joker 2. Tell me about it.
It's bad. It's bad. So I'm of two minds of it. Either the director did not want to make this movie, and the producers gave him so much money he could not say no. He was like, well, this will pay for the rest of my life. And then he just kind of pumped out a sequel without caring about it.
Yeah.
Or the director was actively working against the first movie, where he didn't appreciate how people empathize too much with Joker, because it feels like the whole movie of Joker 2 is to make you feel bad for empathizing with Arthur Fleck / Joker in the first movie.
Really?
Where like he starts off like back as Arthur Fleck and not Joker, not confident at all, which is very weird and out of like, it just feels off. And then every time he is the Joker, it's either a dream sequence, which isn't real, or he tries to act like the Joker in the movie and he immediately gets beaten or literally raped. I did not make that up. That literally happens for mouthing off as the Joker. And then he dies at the end. I'll spoil it because the movie is genuinely awful. And like the whole movie just feels like it's just destroying the first movie and just making it bad. Like, I don't know. It feels like it's a response to people who like the first movie being like, you shouldn't have liked it. And it's so weird. So it takes everything from the first movie and just undermines it.
The phrase that comes to mind after that description you gave me is never attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like the first scenario is actively more likely because,
yeah. I don't think...
Joaquin Phoenix was thrown a dump truck full of money as well to come back. And then, for the second theory, or the second mindset you had with regards to the movie, for that to be true, you'd have to be giving Todd Phillips or the writers or whoever a lot of credit for being this mastermind of writing where it's like, I'm going to insult the fans of the first movie by making this one intentionally dog shit.
That's what it feels like. Like the whole theme of the first movie is that Joker bad and you shouldn't empathize with him, and you're like, what? That was the opposite of the first movie. That's the whole first movie.
Yeah, and so I feel like the first scenario is more likely.
Yeah. Also, the musical portions are not terrible, but they're still musical portions, so they're not good.
That's a shame because when I heard Lady Gaga was cast as Harley Quinn, I was like, oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, she's actually really good. That's one thing. So a couple of the musical portions are actually not bad. Harley Quinn is Lady Gaga is fantastic as Harley Quinn. She does a great job.
Oh, nice.
And Joaquin Phoenix also does a great job as Arthur Fleck / Joker. There's also most of the movie's a court drama, and there's a scene where they interview one of the characters in the first movie. That's the standout scene in the movie, best scene in the whole thing. His performance is gold. Amazing.
Wow, okay.
Unfortunately, the other 90% of the movie is just bad.
That's a shame.
And it ends in the most unceremonious, like, oh wow, whoop-de-doo kind of way.
That's
ever.
A shame. That's a shame because the movie, well, whether you like it or not, the movie made $1 billion and it resonated with a lot of people, and so the
sequel is not making good money, from what I read.
Yeah, and apparently it has a lower Rotten Tomatoes a critical and audience score than Morbius. So,
oh man,
it's Joker time.
I mean, honestly, yeah. At least Morbius didn't actively damage another movie. Morbius was bad, but at least Morbius didn't make a prequel worse. Mm-hmm. Whereas watching Joker 1 after watching Joker 2 just feels weird because you know what happens after Joker 1.
Yeah.
And it's nothing good.
Maybe we can treat Joker 2 like the Highlander sequels where it's like they don't exist.
That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
Yeah. So treating the Godfather 1 and 2 the way you treat Godfather 3. It's like, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Have we talked about Beetlejuice in the podcast? I saw Beetlejuice, the new one.
No, we haven't.
It's good. I really like Beetlejuice.
Oh, very nice. I haven't seen the original, so I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Well, for people who have seen the original, it captures the tone of the original perfectly. Breakneck pacing, just wacky characters, and really good, funny humor. Like Willem Dafoe's in the movie.
Oh, okay.
And he doesn't do anything. He is not plot relevant at any point in the entire film. But God bless him, he's the best character. Like, I loved every scene he was in.
Really?
He plays a movie actor who played a detective in real life, and then he dies, and in the underworld, he's a detective, an actual detective. But he's not good at his job because he's an actor. So every scene, he's just trying to be like cool detective man. But he doesn't know how to be an actual detective. So he just doesn't do anything the whole film.
Really?
He just shows up to be like, we're going to investigate these crimes. And then he poses, and that's it. That's the end of the scene.
Wow.
It's brilliant. But yeah, it really does capture that feeling. All the Dietz family are all wacky and silly, just like they were in the first movie. Michael Keaton still has that same energy, even though his age is, he's obviously much older. Mm-hmm. I mean, he like kills it. It's a great movie. Would recommend.
All right. Beetlejuice recommendation there.
Yeah.
See Beetlejuice after you see Transformers 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, treat yourself to a double feature. Have you ever done a double feature in the movie theater?
Yeah.
Well,
so
are you happy about that?
I didn't do a double feature in the movie theater, but when it came to the Star Wars movies, when the 9th movie came out, I watched all of them.
Oh, okay.
They had this big special where you could see every Star Wars movie in order from 1 to 9.
Oh, yeah.
And me and my friend did that. And fun fact, people who go to those things smell like how you'd think they'd smell.
Oh.
So, like, you're like, oh, you guys didn't even shower before coming here.
Wow.
And we're going to be here for over... How long were we there? It's like 40 hours.
Jeez.
Because it's every movie. It's a lot of movies. And watching them back to back was interesting because I hate Ewoks, and B, the original trilogy has like 2 good tracks, 2 good songs, and then you get to the prequels, which are not good, but man, do they have banger music. Like, the whole time I was watching the prequels, I was like, yo, the music in the prequels is so good. So good.
I mean, John Williams, baby.
Dude. But yeah, the prequels are at least fun because they're silly and over the top. I mean, everything with Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, I can't. I still think. Okay, we may have to dedicate an entire episode to this, but I don't think that the sequels have made the prequels better. I still think they're objectively bad.
Oh no, they're bad. The only thing that made the prequels better were the memes, because now I can laugh at the movies.
Yes, like the kid Anakin, Jake Lloyd. I get it. You did not deserve all the hate you got.
Oh yeah,
but your acting's terrible. All the scenes with you are horrible.
Yeah.
And then the politics are boring. The movie really doesn't get going until the 3rd act. And then episode 2, the romance is terrible. The Hayden Christensen is not a good actor. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people were hyped when he came back for Obi-Wan. I'm sorry. He is not a good actor. I have seen Jumper. He is not good in that either.
Yeah.
So, it's not good.
Ewan McGregor, though, that guy's a good actor.
So, okay, I feel like there's been some historical revisionism with Ewan McGregor's performance in the prequels. Because I remember the Red Letter Media Plinkett reviews of the prequels, and they were shitting on Ewan McGregor the entire time.
I thought he was good. Like, when I rewatched the prequels, I thought he was good. Like, he's got some dumb lines, and the direction is bad in every scene of the whole movies, or all 3 movies. But, like, he delivers them with heart, like, especially during the final duel with him and Anakin. Bro, Ewan McGregor's acting his soul out. You feel the pain when he's yelling at Anakin, "You are my brother." Like, you feel it. That entire final fight in the prequels is fantastic. Actually, I'll say that. It's like the emotional buildup and everything like hits just right with the music and the action, the choreography and the acting. It's just everything that led up to literally the last 2 movies and everything that led up to that was just not good.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, to your point, like when Obi-Wan says, "I failed you, Anakin. I have failed you," and he sounds like he's just so tired when he's saying it because he's been fighting for a bit. I'm like, okay, that's good delivery.
Yeah.
There's just.
And then Emperor Palpatine's funny. That's all I got. The one thing the sequels did that makes the prequels slightly more enjoyable is know that like all messed up Sith Emperor Palpatine like had a child. That means he had sex with someone. Imagine that. Just feel it.
I don't want to imagine that. Thanks for
Unlimited
that.
power. Like, it's crazy. Then you get to the sequels. Watching them in order was a trip because you get to the first sequel, 7, and you're like, okay, it's not bad. It's not really that good. It's kind of derivative, but it was enjoyable. Then you get to 8, and you're like, ooh, that sucked. And then you get to 9, and you're like, oh my god, actually execute me on the spot. I don't want to. This movie, it made me physically feel ill. The pacing was so quick. The cuts were so quick. I started getting a headache. And obviously, I just watched 9 movies, so disclaimer.
Yeah.
But man, that movie was bad.
Yeah, they say, oh, hey, Ray, you have parents and your granddad is Emperor Palpatine. They do nothing with that, despite the amount of massive implications that has.
Yeah, and also, it was way better when her parents were nobodies.
Which Rian Johnson set up.
That made the story more interesting.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, you're a Palpatine. Oh, okay.
I mean, that could be interesting, but they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they try to do something with it, but it's executed so poorly.
You're a Palpatine, so you have to be evil. And then she's evil for 30 seconds and goes, oh, I'm going to be good again. And you're like, what is this? Why did you put this in the movie?
Oh, man. Rule 34 went to town on Sith Rey.
Oh, God.
Every time I see a Sith Rey, not necessarily a lewd drawing, but just in general, where
how often do you see these lewd drawings?
Not often, but when the movie first came out, I saw them everywhere, and the line that always accompanied the drawing was, "Look what they took away from you." I'm just like,
cringe.
What? It's like, yeah.
They should just put a picture of all 3 sequel movies and be like, look what they took away from you.
Exactly.
Good Star Wars films.
Exactly. I mean, are you even at all curious what George Lucas's ideas were for episode 8 and 9?
Not really.
That Disney tossed out?
Maybe, not really. I mean, I don't know.
From what I heard, he really wanted to dig into midichlorians and whatnot, which...
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, what made Star Wars work is that it was, not explained. When you get into the nitty-gritty of how the Force works, it becomes real dumb.
Yeah, it's literally a movie about space wizards. You don't have to get into the bloodstream about it.
Don't turn it into a sci-fi. We know it's not a sci-fi.
It's a sci-fantasy, not sci-fiction.
Also, George, can we stop putting racial stereotypes as aliens? Just, please. Every alien race does not need to be an analog to a racial caricature. It just doesn't have to be.
Also, can we get a planet with more than one biome, please?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, that's just a Star Wars problem as a whole. The sequels have that same issue.
Yeah, I guess I'm fine with the biome thing.
To me,
it is hokey, though. It doesn't make sense. I never really thought about it.
Yeah, it's it's an entire moon that has forests. It's just forest.
This is a water planet. And you're like, I don't think that's how would their climate work?
Right?
They have a sun?
But yeah, this is... I'm sure we can have an entire dedicated episode.
On Star Wars, yeah.
Yes, on Star Wars for that. But in the meantime, this has been another lighthearted, non-autistic related episode of the Sperging Out Podcast. My name is Mitch Grace. I am the author of the book Growing Up with Asperger's, Lessons Learned and Shareable Wisdom on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, and audiobook formats. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host extraordinaire.
Thank you for having me. I've had a great time.
And we will see you in the next episode.